Welcome everybody to the Child Abuse Prevention webinar put on by Positive Coaching Alliance and Kidpower. Last week we did a webinar for coaches and youth sports organizations leaders about how to protect kids from abusive situations. Tonight's webinar is for sports parents, and I would like to say to you parents out there that we would prefer that you not have kids participate in this webinar. We're going to be talking about some things about how parents can keep their kids safe, and it would be more appropriate if this is just all adults and no children. So please take that into consideration. I'm Jim Thompson. I'm the CEO and founder of Positive Coaching Alliance. Positive Coaching Alliance is a national organization designed to create a movement across the country to transform youth sports away from a miniature professional model to a youth development model. What we're really about is using sports to develop better competitors and better people. And there really is, if you think about it, there's no better place to teach life lessons and develop character in kids to create better competitors and better people than the playing field. You can try to teach character in the classroom, and it can be a remote, abstract, kind of artificial experience for kids. But if they're on the football field, the baseball diamond, the swimming pool, the track, it's not remote or abstract at all. Now, our goal with Positive Coaching Alliance is to create, as I say, better competitors and better people. So we make sports better and our whole society and the whole world better. But we can't do that if kids aren't safe. And this is one reason that Positive Coaching Alliance has leaped into this issue. We're not an expert on this, but we have relationships with so many schools and youth sports organizations around the country that we just feel that this is a national teachable moment. The troubling situations, the allegations made against some high-profile individuals in the world of sports have created an opportunity to shine a light on what is a very serious problem. And I think it's not an exaggeration to say that the information you get tonight may actually save a kid's life. I like to say that the most important word in our name, Positive Coaching Alliance, is alliance. We can't do anything by ourselves, and if you're trying to create a movement, you've got to have a lot of people involved. I'm very excited about having Irene van der Zande of Kidpower, the founder and head of Kidpower, working with us. They're doing fantastically important work. Also, we have just a tremendous network of PCA trainers, partners, supporters, champions, and we have one of those very special people here tonight, Judge Mike Town from Hawaii. Mike is, in addition to being a retired judge, he's also a PCA trainer. I'm going to, at this point, introduce our speakers. That's me. Judge Mike Town is, as I said, a retired family court judge. He's an outstanding coach and leader. He's been coaching many sports, but primarily now he's from Hawaii, been coaching paddling, outrigger canoe. He's a mediator. He's a practitioner of positive coaching in all aspects of his life. I thought for many years, ever since I met Mike, that if I cared about a family and that family was in trouble, I would want them to be in his court, his family courtroom, because he embodies the principles of positive coaching. He understands the concept of emotional tanks and how if you want people in trouble to be able to crawl out of that trouble, they have to have reinforcement and encouragement. He's also for many years now, been teaching and coaching other judges around the country about the use of positive coaching in the courtroom. He's also just a fantastic PCA workshop presenter, and I think if you're familiar with the Yiddish term a mensch is a solid person who does not wobble no matter what's going on, the kind of person that you know, has a combination of kindness and wisdom, and Mike Town is a mensch. So it's a real delight for me to say that Mike is a friend of mine and to have him here with us tonight. Irene van der Zande is the founder and executive director of Kidpower. One of the great things for me, for having worked with Positive Coaching Alliance now for more than 13 years, is it's introduced me to just amazing, terrific people, and Irene is way at the top of that list. I think of Irene as an old friend that I met for the first time recently. You know, we met only in the last few months, but feels like an old friend. Not that she's old, but a longtime friend. Also doing incredible training. Kidpower is doing fantastic work training kids and adults to practice the kinds of behaviors that can protect kids. When Irene and I first met, it was around the issue of bullying, which is a big emphasis of Kidpower as well. And I went through the materials, and she briefed me on what they're doing. And you know, just as one example, you know, a kid on the playground can go up to a teacher and say, you know, so-and-so is bothering me. And the teacher might say, you know, stop whining, go take care of it. And one of the things that Kidpower does is teach kids how to make a report. So instead of kind of like, oh, so-and-so is bothering me, the child learns and practices so that he or she can go up to a teacher on the playground and say, I wish to make a report of bullying, and then to stick with it and not get discouraged if that adult doesn't respond. And if ultimately that adult doesn't respond, to go to another adult and again to say, I want to make a report. So the information and the training that Kidpower is doing is just fantastic stuff. And I just feel really lucky to have Irene and Kidpower advising us in this really important issue. So let me go over today's agenda. First, we're going to cover some things you should know about this issue. I felt that I was pretty well informed about this, but when we got into this, started working with Mike and Irene, I realized, wow, there's just a lot of stuff I need to know. Specific actions you can take to protect your child. We're going to talk about some PCA and Kidpower resources. We're going to take your questions, and you've got should have a question function at the bottom right of your screen. And this webinar will go till around, well, for about an hour, 7 o'clock in California till about 10 o'clock on the East Coast. Irene and Tom and Mike have agreed to stay after for a while to answer questions. So whenever throughout this webinar you have a question, ask it, and some of them will be answered via email as we go through this. Some of them, Courtney Pollock, who is our Director of Product Management, is on this webinar. Some of them she may say to me, hey, here's a question that you should take online. But if you will hang around afterwards and get your questions, we will get those answered for you. And then the next steps, what to do with this information afterwards. So let me turn this over to Mike. And Mike, what signs should a parent watch for? You know, that might indicate there's some abusive situations going on. Mike Town, are you there?
I'm here now. Can you hear me?
Yes, great.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Just to lead in, I became a coach in 1962, a parent in 1971, and a judge in 1979. All of those things are very similar because we have to know what signs to look for in our kids and our kids' kids, and I think it's really important that parents be in sync with their kids and look at both objective and subjective signs. And on your screen you can see the various things: emotional changes, anxiety, depression, anger, sleep disturbances, unusual fears, somatic, physical types of things. And some of these is going to be regular, adolescent changes and things, bed regression, going backwards, sudden changes in mood. So you have to, we parents have to trust our common sense, our reason, and our intuition, and never deny your intuition as a parent, and let people, if there's a problem, you got to report it somehow. Even a little hint. Irene and I are talking about what the word scintilla means: a hint, a niggle, a concern. And this is tough stuff. It was Mark Twain that said that being a riverboat pilot is the toughest job in the world, and he had to relearn it every single day. Being a parent is one of the toughest jobs in the world. Much of it is counterintuitional, because most people parent like they were parented, for better or for worse. But we have to get smarter at this. So those signs are, and then ask. In PCA, Jim, we talk about WAG: watch, ask, get help. And it's real hard for some parents to ask other people. So these signs, trust the signs, but also trust your gut, if that makes any sense, Jim.
Yeah, and Mike, I think the idea that often there is no physical signs, that the signs are more changes in behavior or emotional. So, the fact that your child or a child who is being abused is not showing any physical signs isn't necessarily indicators that there isn't something going on, especially if there's these other behavior and emotional signs. Mike, you said, trust your instincts. Well, let me ask you then, what do you do when, okay, where is the, oh, there we go. What do you do if the person whose behavior worries you, the adult whose behavior worries you, is a friend or someone who is highly respected? Do you still go through the process of reporting your suspicions?
Well, in PCA we talk about moral character as doing the right thing even when no one agrees or no one knows. Particularly if someone's a friend, someone's highly respected, it's going to put us to the test of whether kids' safety trumps a friendship or trumps reputation or trusts other people getting upset with you. And we've seen in these high-profile cases, society will often ally with the adult and not with the child. And yet these children are not little adults. Their innocence can be stolen, their trust betrayed in a heartbeat by an adult who seems to be credible. And many of these folks are very, very skillful at that, getting near kids. We've seen it time and time again. Experts say 1 out of 3 girls, 1 out of 6 boys by 18 will somehow be abused physically, emotionally, or sexually. So I'm the chair. I flunked retirement, Jim, so I'm back with the Boys and Girls Club of Hawaii with 10,000 kids in 8 clubs, and we've got hopefully the staff listening today. Out of those 10,000 kids, there's going to be at least 3,000 or more who have somehow been abused or neglected. And so we really got to report it. Reporting is only a concern. You ought not to be judge and jury and make a decision. The problem is many people want to be darn sure before they so-called rat out or tell on a friend. You're not telling on them. You're just raising the issue, hopefully to the right authorities, the police or the CPS. And if there's any doubt, ask somebody else, but ultimately report.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, Mike, that you're not ratting somebody out. I think that's just a really awful way to talk about whistleblowers and people like that who are exhibiting moral courage. You're just reporting what you see or suspect. And in many states, it's required that if you have a suspicion, if there's evidence, you have to do it. So, what do you?
It's a legal requirement, but it's also a moral obligation, I think. And
yeah.
I try to practice as a judge restorative justice to safety, community safety, accountability, which I think any adult should encourage, and then building competency. So that restorative justice is a kind of a triangle type approach.
Yeah. So what if you think, what if a child says something about being abused, but you think they might be making it up?
Well, I think for me, what I would think would be almost irrelevant. If the child is saying something, take it at face value and report it. Let the experts sort out if it's been exaggerated, could be minimized. I might say also in the process of flunking retirement, I'm now with the Hawaii Paroling Authority. I go to a different prison every day and hear 10 to 20 cases a day, many of which are sex assault cases. These kids are not making it up. People in general will say, you're making it up, you're lying, you're trying to get X or Y or Z, but just report the concern and let the experts sort it out.
Mike, last week you mentioned that a lot of, at least some of the prisoners that you deal with are abusers, and
yes.
a lot of them have been abused as well.
Yes.
So it's really serious. This can affect a child's life for the rest of their life.
Well,
what about background check?
I did want to say one thing. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I want to say one thing. It can be intergenerational. It's time to break the cycle. But sometimes for the kid it's a speed bump. Sometimes it's devastating. We adults that are reporting need to keep a very cool head and not make more out of it than it is or isn't. Let the experts and the process sort it out.
Yeah. So what about background checks? Do background checks keep unsafe people, unsafe adults out of youth sports?
They're very helpful. They have limitations, and know that obviously they don't keep them out of youth sports, but they can help. They can deter perpetrators from entering in. They can keep us from not allowing them in, but sometimes they're limited, as Irene and I think you know, to convictions. And it's only as good as the information that's been input. It may or may not apply to arrests. And so in tandem with interviews, and I think whoever the leagues or the head coaches gut is telling them, those are all checks and balances. It's not a foolproof situation.
Mike, I want to, emphasize something you said earlier about predators go where kids are. Kids are in youth sports, and the successful ones camouflage what they're doing. So, you hear all the time somebody who is arrested for a violent crime or whatever, and they say, wow, he just didn't seem like the kind who would do it. Well, the best criminals aren't. So background checks can help, but you as parents have responsibility here. Irene, let me turn this over to you, and let me ask you, maybe you could start by just, actually, one more thing I want to say, which is last week's webinar that we did for youth sports organizations and coaches was taped and is accessible through the Positive Coaching Alliance website. Irene van der Zande, you founded Kidpower some years ago. How did you get into this in the first place?
Well, in 1985, when my kids were young, I took a field trip of a group of young children to downtown Santa Cruz, which is where I live. And in a public place in the middle of the day, a man suddenly started saying that he was going to kidnap one of the kids that I had with me. And I stopped him by yelling, and by yelling at a bystander for help. Obviously, having that experience took away forever for me the belief that bad things wouldn't happen because I'm careful and a good person. And even though I protected the kids, what haunted me was that I couldn't be with these kids all the time. I couldn't be with my kids all the time. And I wanted to find ways that would help them be safe and take charge of their safety and help me know what to do. that wouldn't be scary, that wouldn't be depressing. At that time, the programs that were available were, this is in 1985, and we incorporated as a nonprofit in 1989. And we started with teaching just a few people, and now we've reached over 2 million people around the world with programs. And I have gathered with many, many wonderful people, including the Positive Coaching Alliance and all of you, to be able to bring these skills to yet more kids.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about Kidpower?
So Kidpower is, again, a nonprofit organization. We teach, we have very hands-on practical skills that we teach children, teens, adults. We work with kids as young as soon as they can talk all the way till people are senior citizens. And we train adults in how parents and teachers and other caring adults in how to protect kids from all kinds of dangers, especially any kind of violence, and also how to prepare them to take charge of their own safety. And you'll be learning more about it as we do the presentation, but that's basically what we do.
Good. Do you want to address the underlying principle?
Yes. So our founding principle is that the safety and healthy self-esteem of a child are worth causing anyone embarrassment, inconvenience, or offense. And I doubt that anyone on this call would argue with that. The problem is that when we ask people, well, how many of you, we ask adults, hate to be embarrassed or to embarrass other people? And how many of you don't like to be bothered when you're busy or bother other people? And how many of you don't like people to be mad at you and don't like being mad at them? And how many of you feel like your kids feel the same way? Of course, most people will raise their hands and will say yes. So the issue is that embarrassment, inconvenience, and offense are powerful feelings that can get in the way of safety. And so that's why we need to practice skills that help to overcome that and also to really take charge of safety.
So what do parents need to know and do to keep their kids safe from abuse?
Well, we've identified 4 core strategies, and the first one is just to put safety first, which is some of what you've been talking about and Mike's been talking about, what our underlying principle represents, is to take personal responsibility for addressing a safety problem. You know, so many times safety issues have come up and everybody says later, well, I was worried about that, or I had a bad feeling, but I thought it wasn't my place. Well, you know, it is your place. If you're a child's parent, if you're in charge of kids in your life, it is your place to address problems and to follow up to make sure that kids are safe. And to realize that any kind of reputation harm that might be done by addressing a problem early on is only going to be bigger if you wait. Second strategy is you want to make sure you know who's in charge of your kids. There's something I call the illusion of safety, where people trust because it's a school, because it's a team, because it's a family. And child molesters are usually very charismatic, charming people who most of the time are doing wonderful things with kids. And they might spend quite a bit of time cultivating a relationship with a group or a family before they do something. And they also cultivate relationships with the kids. So you want to know what's happening with your kids, and if something makes you uncomfortable, you want to pay attention and take action. Third is you want to listen to your kids and teach them not to keep secrets about, an unsafe secret would be a secret about touch. That should never be a secret, or problems, or games, or time alone with adults, or gifts that someone gives them. These are all things that kids should speak up about, because when they know, it can make such a difference. In a very frightening book called Conversations with a Pedophile, it's a therapist who interviewed a man who was in prison for molesting 1,000 boys. And he talked about how he would trick kids and find out that whether or not they were going to keep a secret by doing something like swearing, and then say, oh, I just said a bad word, and if you tell your parents, then I won't be able to do all these wonderful things with you anymore. And then he targeted the kids who didn't tell. And finally, you prepare young people to take charge of their safety by practicing skills. Just talking about problems with them, that's why we didn't want kids on this call, that raises awareness and anxiety, but it doesn't make kids safer to be more anxious. It makes kids safer when they know what to do and they've been successful in practicing what to do in a context that's really age appropriate and relevant to their lives. And that brings us to the next slide, I think. Because, I'm sorry, I should just pause here.
Sorry, I was on mute. What can parents teach their kids to help them, protect them from abuse when they're in sports?
I think the same skills that will protect them in other environments. It's just don't give your power away. And then teach kids what they need to know. The next slide shows our 4 core boundary rules. Kids bound, sexual abuse, bullying, and other kinds of violence are really a violation of boundaries. And our 4 rules are we each belong to ourselves. Some things are not a choice. You need to say that to kids. If you tell kids my body belongs to me and the first time they get stopped physically from hitting another child, well, then it can seem like a lie. But the reality is that things to do with health and safety and many other things are just not a choice. And problems should not be secrets, and to keep telling until you get help. And I have a story from my kid's childhood where my son used to like to say when he was 8 years old, he'd say, "Mom, my body belongs to me and I don't have to take a bath." And I'd say, "Yes, you belong to yourself, but you must take a bath." And he'd say, "I'll tell." And I'd say, "Great, tell the whole world your mom made you take a bath." And that was fine. But if he had said, "Oh, please don't," if I had said, "Please don't tell," that'd be too embarrassing if you tell them. Even as his mother, if I said something like that, I would be making a mistake. We also want kids to understand what the rules are about what is and is not their choice in terms of touch or games for play, teasing, and affection. And there we say, even though other things might not be a choice, this should be. It should be safe, the choice of each person, allowed by the adults in charge, and not a secret. And so the example we give is, say, if kids are roughhousing or tickling, and they want to do it in the middle of the street. Well, that's not safe. If one wants to do it and the other one doesn't, it's not the choice of each. If they want to do it on top of the dinner table, well, that's not probably going to be forbidden. And finally, if one says, "Let's play this game," and the other one says, "But keep it a secret," that would also be breaking the safety rules.
So, Irene, that's great. What can people tell their kids to help protect them from abuse?
Kids, while you don't want to put explicit ideas in kids' minds that can stay with them, you need to give them enough information. It doesn't really make kids emotionally safe if you say, "By the way, the person most likely to harm you is someone you love and trust." So instead, what we recommend that adults around parents, coaches, teachers, at least once a year, because kids' lives are changing and growing, give this message to kids, that sometimes adults do things to hurt kids or make them uncomfortable or unsafe. If this happens to you or anyone you know, it is not your fault, and it does not mean anyone is a bad person. It does mean that help is needed. The way to get help is to tell adults you trust and to keep telling until someone does something to fix the problem. If one adult does not listen, find another adult to tell. And remember that it is never too late to tell. After one workshop where this statement was made, then on the way home, there were two sisters, and the older sister said to her mom, "I need to talk to you about a safety problem." And when they got home, it turned out that their neighbor had been abusing her and her little sister for a couple of years. And he's now in jail, and those kids are safe. And they actually wanted that story to be told because they thought the message that it was never too late to tell and that it was not their fault was so important for them to be able to feel safe.
You know, Irene, I think that emphasizes again that this information is so powerful that it actually can save people's lives.
Yes, that's right. Kids also need to know about private areas, because I was so struck by one of the stories about this very sad story about the scandals with Miramonte School in Los Angeles, that a girl, now she did a great thing. She pushed a hand away, which was great when a teacher tried to touch her inappropriately. But then she didn't really know to tell her mom until she saw a program on Oprah about this, and then she did tell her mom, and her mom reported it. So kids need explicit information that doesn't put in sexual images in their mind, but tells them what the rules are, and that's what this slide is about. And again, you do it in a very matter-of-fact, upbeat way, not like it's as scary. And kids react to this really well. They say, yes, okay, now I know what to do. So the rule is your private areas are the parts of your body that can be covered by a bathing suit. And for play or teasing, other people should not try to touch your private areas, and they should not try to get you to touch their private areas. That second part is so important, because so often kids are very literal, and they're often told, don't let somebody touch you, but they're not told, don't let somebody try to make you touch them. Sometimes adults need to touch your private areas for health or safety, but this should never be a secret. And people should also not show you pictures in magazines or the computer or in movies about people touching their private areas. So that's the safety rule that kids need, along with the rule about what happens if something, the earlier rule about what do you need to say to kids in case an adult does do something that's unsafe, or even another child does something unsafe. And then we want to go from there to practicing skills. As you can see with this picture of this little girl, it doesn't have to be scary. In fact, it's fun when kids know what to do. The key is that if a child can move your hand off of their shoulder or their shoe or their head, not something sexual, but just stopping that kind of touch, then they will be able to remove somebody's hand from something else. So the way you practice, and the way we do this in class, is we'll just say, now suppose I'm, a family friend, and if you like it when I touch your shoulder, is that okay? And the kids will say yes. And now let's imagine you don't like it. We have kids look you in the eye, move your hand away, and say, please stop. But then we say to kids, but have you ever noticed that sometimes people don't listen to you? And of course they say yes. And we say, well, then we touch them again and don't listen. And they stand up, they move away, they make a fence just like this little girl and say, I said stop, I don't like it. We really want kids to be able to see that they can be both powerful and respectful at the same time. These levels, by the way, are based on normal interactions that happen where people don't have good boundaries in relationships, but they're also based on the progression of what many child molesters do. So the step 4 is dealing with emotional coercion. This is where a lot of abuse begins, because kids don't want, the abuser has made a relationship, they care about this person, and then suddenly the person is sad or upset. So you teach them how to deal with that. You say, don't you like me? Or that hurts my feelings that you told me to stop. And then the child can say, I like you, I don't want to hurt your feelings, and I want you to stop. Or if a child is less verbal, and sometimes we even do this with little kids with puppets, and they just say sorry and stop. So then the next step, which is on the next slide.
By the way, Irene, I just have to say this is so brilliant. That's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, the next step is that somebody breaks the safety rules. I've only put one way of breaking the safety rules here, which is offering a bribe. But it could also be somebody misusing their power, or, of course, as soon as somebody breaks the safety rule about touching private areas, then right away we want to have kids say, stop or I'll tell, or if they're older, maybe stop or I'll report you. So we say, I'll give you a treat if you'll just let me pat your shoulder after you said no. And then we have the child stand up, take a step back, make their fence, and say, stop or I'll tell. With older kids, we also, once they're old enough to understand this concept, without making it super scary, you notice this is not, I'll kill your whole family. We're not trying to put scary ideas in kids' minds that don't need to be there. We're just giving them a practice on what to do. So we just say, something bad will happen if you tell. Promise me you won't tell. And we coach the child to say, I won't tell if you stop. This step is important because child molesters will say to kids, please don't tell, or don't tell, and promise me. And so we tell kids that, of course, most of the time we want you to tell the truth and keep your promises. But you have permission to lie and break a promise if you're doing it to be safe, and you're going to come and tell an adult you trust as quick as you can. And then the last step is we say to the kids, when you get away from this person I'm pretending to be, what are you going to do? And the child or the whole group of children will say, tell. I'm going to tell. And, of course, that's key. The problem is, if we go on to the next slide, is that it can be hard to tell adults. But we want to practice that, too. Now, we don't need to practice with, again, we take a non-sexual, non-terrible problem. It might be kids teasing. It might be kids locked me in the bathroom. So we have them imagine a safety problem, and then we have them practice interrupting a busy adult. Now, you would think, and you pretend to be an adult, they would trust a parent or a teacher or a coach. The problem is that kids interrupt all the time, and so you'd think they don't need to practice interrupting, but it turns out that they do. When they have something that bothers them this much, they need some practice in doing it. So you coach the child, you pretend to be busy, and you say, and the child, if the child is interrupting, often the child will say, excuse me, I need help, and we'll say, that's nice, I'm glad you're having a nice day. So the child then says, look at me, please look at me, I need help. And then we have, and the child would be grumpy because adults are often very rude when kids interrupt them because they're interrupted all the time. And we say, what is it? I'm busy, can't this wait? And we coach the child to persist in asking for help by saying, but this is about my safety. I need help. And we encourage kids to tell the whole story. And then we say, thank you for telling me. You were right to interrupt me. I'm sorry I was grumpy, and we'll figure out what to do. So that's in a nutshell. If parents could give kids these two practices plus the information that we were talking about before, it gives them a great foundation for avoiding most abuse and for protecting themselves if something abusive should happen. But of course, nothing works all the time, which is why we want to know what to do. And also, even if a child, maybe the abuse hasn't happened yet, maybe something is on the earlier testing levels that we were talking about before with the boundary setting. If you panic, so your first job is, if the child says something that you're worried about, is to just take a breath and get calm. If you panic and you sound upset, kids will often retract the story. They don't want to upset adults, and no matter what we tell them, a lot of times kids think that if something bad happened, it means they were bad or it was their fault. So instead you say, thank you for telling me. Your safety is important. Even if the child did something wrong, sometimes maybe a child won't tell because, or they're worried about telling because maybe they went someplace they shouldn't have gone, or started to play a game they shouldn't have played. And then as a parent, you want to make sure you understand. So you just say, make sure you know who it is and what happened without acting horrified, without putting words in the child's mouth, and without interpreting. Just what happened, write it down, and say, thank you again, and what happened is not your fault. Then you make a report. And even if your child has dealt with the situation, it's so important to make a report to protect other children. Maybe one of the stories that you hear is a child didn't knock the teacher's hand away when he tried to touch her. This is one of the LA stories. And when she then told her parents, And they did report it. Unfortunately, it wasn't taken seriously. But she was safe. But if those parents had known to persist, then it's possible that other children would have been protected. And then if there's been any kind of sexual contact, you do need to check with your doctor, and you need to consider counseling, because this is upsetting, and for you and your child. As a parent, it's heartbreaking if you think that you haven't protected your child, or that you've lost trust in a place that you did trust, and you deserve emotional support for that, so that you can be a great support for your child. If anything, even if it's jokes or teasing, makes you uncomfortable, if in the sports, if you have, now we have great policies for your league, but if somebody's doing something that you feel a little uncomfortable about, then speak up and say, that doesn't look safe. That doesn't mean you're not saying you're an evil person, you're not saying you're a child molester, you're just saying that doesn't look safe, or that violates the policies of our league, and you're addressing the situation. And of course, if you think that your child might be in danger, then no matter what, it is not worth winning any game, it is not worth staying on any team, it is not worth staying in any school if you don't think your child is safe. You try to address it if you can, but you trust your gut, just like Mike said, and you get your kid out of a situation that's not safe. You don't want anyone to take away your voice with this. Another sad story about the LA school situation was where the parents went to the principal and said, I'm uncomfortable with these pictures, these photos that this teacher has taken of my second grade daughter. And the principal discounted it, said it was a class project. And detectives are saying that it's possible that this girl was then, was with the other teacher that's been charged, and he did something to her as well. So you must not let anyone take away your voice or your sense of power as a parent. When people say, well, what if somebody calls me paranoid, or I'm a paranoid parent, I just say, tell them thank you, I'm doing my job.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Irene. I think this goes back to what Mike talked about, moral courage. Physical courage is, you risked your life to go into a burning building, whatever. But moral courage really is about discomfort, inconvenience, embarrassment, and we just can't let, we as parents, I'm now a grandparent, we cannot let our embarrassment keep us from acting when kids that we care about are in danger. Thank you, Irene. Let me talk a little bit about some resources for sports parents. We have some guidelines at our website, positivecoach.org, and some at the Kidpower, www.kidpower.org. First thing is to learn the facts. We really encourage you to lobby for policies. And lobbying, often has a connotation of government. But in this case, if your kids are in a youth sports organization that doesn't have a policy about child abuse protection, sexual abuse protection, then you as a parent need to go to the leaders of that organization and say, look, we need to do this. Empower yourself and your child with skills to stay safe. We talked earlier, Mike talked about the signs of potential abuse. Notice the changes in your child and act on suspicions, and then check out resources that are available. And again, Kidpower has fantastic resources. Irene is only kind of touching the surface of all the things they have on their website. Now let's talk about that lobbying piece as a parent. Last week, when we were talking to youth sports leaders and coaches, we said to coaches, if your organization, if your league or whatever youth sport organization you're coaching in doesn't have a set of policies, that's in a sense putting you at risk. You may be in a situation where you're not sure what to do, and so we really encourage you to to look at the policy and procedures template that Positive Coaching Alliance with Kidpower's advice and help has put together. There's a policy statement that you can get at our website that, first of all, puts that organization on record that the safety of the kids in that organization are the most important, is the most important thing. Secondly, the issue of coach recruitment. I mentioned before that predators go where the kids are in youth sports, and so the organizations that, many youth sports organizations are constantly working to try to get enough coaches because they have more kids and teams they want to be able to field than they necessarily have coaches. But it's really crucial that the leaders of youth sports organizations understand who is coaching in their organization, and you as parents can help them. The template that we've developed encourages, actually makes it a policy of the organization that there's an application that the coach has to fill out that includes explicit questions about whether there have been any prior claims or allegations of abuse against them, and individuals as character references for the coach. And then there needs to be screening so that it's not just enough for a coach to fill out this application form. A designated representative of the organization needs to talk to the coach, interview the coach, and talk to the references. And then finally, background checks. Again, background checks are not going to prevent every problem, but it's really best practices to have one. And we recommend that youth sports organizations should update a background check at least every 5 years for returning coaches. Now, another part of this is to have an orientation for coaches and parents. So this policy template would then say, and you as parents can take this and go to the leaders of your youth sports organization and say, look, we need this to keep our kids safe in your organization. To have an orientation every year so that a representative of the organization's board of directors will go over this policy with coaches and an information session for parents where they will go over, they will be exposed to the policy statement as well. Then, and this is a really interesting one, I think an important one. By the way, this template is in a Word format, so you can amend it. The organization leaders can go through this. So we talk about prohibited behavior, and we really encourage organizations to list what prohibited behavior is for their organization. Use of profane or degrading language. It just should not be acceptable. Coaches who use sexual kind of innuendo or jokes, or allow their team members to use that kind of harassing language, that's just not acceptable. Anyone, the coach or another teammate, threatening or intentionally inflicting injury on a child on a team should be prohibited. Any sexual offense or engaging in any sexual contact with a minor is prohibited. And then finally, any kind of sexual advance should be prohibited. Now, the second part of this is discouraged behavior. And I have to say, when Positive Coaching Alliance started developing this template, many of the things in the discouraged behavior were in the prohibited behavior. And Irene from Kidpower really educated us to the extent that you don't want to ban things, you don't want to prohibit things where the prohibition could actually be worse than allowing it. So, for example, the policy says our organization discourages non-related one adult, one child interaction in these situations, rides to and from practices and games. So we say, unless there's a situation in which, let's say you're a coach and the practice is over, it's long over, the parent has not shown up for one of the kids. Now, we want to discourage one unrelated adult and one child being in the car together, but if the alternative is leaving that child in the dark of night where might be at more risk, then this is a discouraged behavior, but not, there are times when it makes sense to do that. Indoor practice facilities behind closed doors, again, one adult, one child, unrelated, behind closed doors, not a good idea. In locker rooms, for travel teams, overnight accommodations in hotel rooms, etc. And then the template has a situation or a spot where the organization can add something that's specific to their organization that may not be general. Lastly, then, is the reporting of suspected abuse. That this policy makes it required that reports of abuse or suspected abuse must be reported. Now, as a parent, my son is 34 now. My grandson is approaching 2, so I don't have a child in youth sports now, but I will in a few years. And I want my grandchild to participate in sports in an organization that has a policy like this to help protect him. So again, as parents, it's really important that you be advocates for a policy like this with your youth sports organization. And I want to just mimic what Irene said about a child who's reporting a situation and the adult on the playground or the coach is ignoring it. You don't give up. So if you as a parent go to the youth sports organization and say, hey, you need to have a policy on sexual abuse and child abuse, and here's a policy that Positive Coaching Alliance and Kidpower have developed, and the board of that organization doesn't take you seriously, then one of the things you can do is get some other parents to come with you, but to not give up on this. And for coaches, this is a protection too, because you want to know what that policy is as a coach. So if you're in a situation, the coaching and sports and teams are, they're not cookbook situations. They're always things that may come up that aren't anticipated. And so as a coach, you want to know what is the policy of this organization in this situation, protection for the coach as well as the child. So what do we expect from the coaches of our child's team? I think the key word here is leadership. Coaches are leaders, and they need to be leaders to create a respectful team environment. No harassment, no bullying, no abuse, no hazing. A coach that promotes or allows hazing or any kind of abuse among the team members is not a leader, and that should be confronted about this. We mentioned before, this respectful team environment, no profane or degrading language, either from the coaches or from the team members towards each other, no threatening or inflicting physical harm, no sexual language of any kind, even as a joke. These kind of jokes are not funny. And again, to avoid these one adult, one child situations, except with parent knowledge and permission. So you as parents can play a very valuable role here to encourage your child's coaches to seek out these resources, and the same with youth sports organizations leaders. I want to, again, encourage people. Hopefully people have been sending their questions as we go through this, but there's a question function at the bottom of your screen, so please do this, and Mike and Irene will stay on the line. Mike, any last words you'd like to say before we wrap this up?
Excuse me. The PCA and Kidpower partnership will set the bar where kids are safe, and we shouldn't be afraid to set the bar higher. And I really want to commend Jim and Irene and PCA for doing this.
And Mike, thank you for your time on this. It's just been really valuable to work with you on this. Irene, any last things you'd like to say before we wrap this up?
I just feel honored to be on a team with the Positive Coaching Alliance, and with you and with Mike and with all your team. It is really a wonderful opportunity to do what you said and take something really terrible that's happened and help protect other kids from the same thing happening to them. So I really want to thank you.
Yeah, and we're just delighted to be working with you and to have your advice. I feel like the consulting that you've given us has just been incredibly valuable. You know, this really is a national teachable moment. These bad things that have been alleged against high-profile individuals in sports, this provides an opportunity to teach, to inform, and save kids' lives. So become informed and act. Learn more. Go to our website. Go to Kidpower website. And Mike and Irene will stay on the line for a while so we can answer your email questions through the question focus. So again, Irene and Kidpower, thank you so much. Mike Town, thank you so much. And all of you out there who have been with us for this webinar, thank you for staying with us, and please spread the word. Let the people you know, the leaders of your youth sports organization, your kids' coaches, other parents, let them know about these resources. This webinar will be accessible as last week's one is now through the PCA website, and encourage you to tell people about it. So with that, I want to thank everybody, and we'll bring the webinar to a close, but there's still time to ask your questions. Thank you, everybody.
Hello.
Hello?
Good job, Irene.
Well, you too. Thank you. So now I'm not sure if everyone can hear us or if I'm waiting for questions.
Yeah, Irene and Mike, we are waiting for questions. Right now, we had a couple that I forwarded on to Courtney and Ripper, but there aren't that many questions coming in right now. But we'll stay on for at least another 10 minutes and make sure if somebody wants to ask a question, they are welcome to do so.
You'll just stay on the phone. Should we stay on the phone, or
yes.
Are you going to just forward them and we?
No, let's stay on the phone for another, until we're clear that there's no more questions.
Sure, and maybe you could. Can people hear us?
Yes, people can hear us right now.
Okay, so we could answer even verbally and out loud questions.
Yes.
Too. Super. So. I would love to, until we get questions, Mike, if you could talk more about that difference between innocent till proven guilty and the presumption of evidence. I think a lot of people are really confused about that.
Well, suspicion is as I mentioned, is scintilla or any small amount of concern, which we parents shouldn't wait for a proof beyond a reasonable doubt, or even a preponderance, which is more likely than not. If there's a concern, we should report it or take it seriously. So the world is not a court of law, thank goodness, and that's only the criminal side that's proof beyond a reasonable doubt, presumption of innocence. And I don't know how it got into the home or the classroom, but if there's a worry, we address it. And then we can rule it out. What doctors do is rule out concerns that they have, that they just want to make sure. That's called a rule-out protocol in medicine. And once we've ruled it out, then it's done. We haven't ruled it in, we ruled it out. It's no longer a concern. Now, does that make any sense? So you go from
yes, it does. It's very
1% concern, 50-50 is preponderance, 90 plus is proof beyond a reasonable doubt, or 99 plus.
And I know a lot of people probably worry because it's the unknown for them about what happens when you do make a report. Maybe you could talk a little about that. As I said, until we get a question.
Sorry to interrupt, Irene and Mike. You have a good question that's come in that I think you could address. The question is, how do you prevent a witch hunt from starting out of stray comments?
Irene, you want to take that?
Okay. Well, I'm not 100% clear on what the nature of the stray comments are. What you do is, one of the things that I've seen happen is that the stray comments get magnified, that people pass it all around a community, but they don't actually go to somebody who could do something about it, which is what we were just talking about with Mike. So if there's something where somebody says so-and-so, is weird with kids and does stuff inappropriately with them, and it's on the nature of not overt sexual abuse but inappropriate behavior, you confront it. And you say it's not okay, and you monitor the situation closely. But you go to that person and that person's supervisor. If it sounds like sexual abuse, then you report it, even if it's a small percentage of suspicion, because you're not qualified to assess, and it could be the tip of the iceberg. But what makes things into a witch hunt is when people talk to each other instead of actually taking action. I don't know if you'd want to add something to that, Mike.
No, I agree. We report it to the right person, and then trust the process. Don't go out and make it some kind of your own agenda. Protect the kid and report it.
Thank you, Mike and Irene. Another question has come in, and it's been asked a couple of times, so I'll just repeat it. The question is, where can people access this webinar, the recording? And the recording is available at the positivecoach.org website, and it will also be available on the Kidpower website. On the Positive Coach website, when you go to the front page of the website, the landing page, there is several pictures of prominent PCA supporters, and underneath that there's a ticker, and you'll see Child Abuse Prevention webinar, and you click on that and it'll take you. The entire webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our own YouTube channel, and you'll be able to listen to and watch the entire thing.
And you're also working it out so that in a few days people will be able to download the PowerPoint, right?
Yes, that's correct. Both the PowerPoint for tonight's webinar and also the PowerPoint from last week, which is different than the one that was presented tonight. They will be available for download, so you can then share that as needed.
And if people go, well, just email us at safety@kidpower.org. That's one way to quickly get to it. We're in the process of changing our website, so it's on our blog, and it'll be very prominent there. You can just go to our homepage and easily access the blog, and you can email us. Also, we have, as is in the on the slide, it'll be listed on our child abuse prevention page, which is www.kidpower.org/child-abuse-prevention.
At this time, we don't have any more questions coming in. We'll perhaps make another open call for anybody who'd like to submit a question. If not, we'll probably just call it end of the webinar, and thank you all for participating.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Yeah, thank you. This went really smoothly. You did a great job, Parag. I think we all did. It was a good team.
Yep.
Yeah, aloha.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody, and good night.
Okay, bye-bye.